of Whisper in Yokai Watch, Butch the Cat and Droopy Dog in Tom and Jerry, Alistair in Ratchet and Clank, A Crack in Time, and so many others. Besides his work voicing characters in animation, cartoons, movies, video games, and anime, Joey was WGN-TV's Bozo the Clown in Chicago from 1984 to 2001. He was also a frequent contestant on the original Gong Show, and actually won the Gong Show trophy with his act, Dr. Flamo, an act that he repeated on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage, you're already here, Joey DeAria!
Welcome. We're a long ways away from the Chicago area.
Long way from Chicago. Of course, I recently moved to Idaho, and that's where I first ran into you, was at the Gem State Conference.
Right.
And then we were in California.
You're getting around. Look at you go.
Yes,
The clown business is treating you well, sir.
Actually, it's very funny, but I was in Los Angeles a month ago. To attend a memorial service for a very good friend of mine, Milt Larson. He's the man who founded the Magic Castle in Hollywood.
Oh, okay.
And I worked for Milt for many years. And while I was there, I ran into David Arquette.
Oh, nice.
And, David Arquette, who
You might know from,
I guess, the
Scream.
Scream.
He was also a WCW wrestling champion.
There he was.
Very much.
Actually, was champion, you're right.
Yeah. And he also did a reboot of Sigmund and the Sea Monsters, which was an old Sid and Marty Krofft show.
Yeah, Sid Croft, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. But I'll get to Whisper.
I was just raising my hand. Whisper was in my
But it was very interesting when they did the reboot of Sigmund and the Sea Monsters. The original boy who was befriending Sigmund and the other Sea Monsters was Johnny Whitaker, who was on Family Affair.
Okay, with Family Affair, with Kathy Garber, who's really interviewed.
Yes.
Very shortly.
And in the reboot, Johnny Whitaker, who's now in his 40s, was I guess a sort of a bit player. He had a small sort of cameo role, which was kind of interesting. But that was it. And while I was with David Arquette, we discussed Sid and Marty Krofft. And I also asked him a lot about Bozo the Clown, because he did, he has taken over the franchise. And
Wait, what?
he now owns Bozo the Clown.
Oh, okay.
He bought the rights to Bozo the Clown from Larry Harmon Pictures. And the last thing he said to me was that they are thinking of doing, you're getting this, you're the first group
Exclusive.
yes, you're the first group I've actually been able to tell this to, is going to produce a Bozo movie.
Oh no.
That's awesome.
Which is kind of interesting. And he couldn't talk about it at the time because of the writer's strike.
Of course.
Right.
But in fact, I heard from him just the other day, and it's on. And I'm hoping to get more information on it. So that's going to be something that he's working on. I'm kind of excited to learn more about it.
That's how we start a con.
Yeah.
We get exclusive
Yeah.
right off the bat. Hollywood exclusive.
There you go.
That's
That's
awesome.
Hollywood. He was in Hollywood, but basically he's now living in Nashville.
Oh, okay. That's. I mean, Hollywood has a movie.
I was gonna say, this is just appropriate for what we just announced.
Why didn't you do that when I came in?
Because we have real people that come.
Well, that's true. But it would have kind of, bulked it up a little bit.
Yeah. I was trying to, but I didn't get off in time, and the time would have been long. And, comedic time is everything. So.
Yeah, that's true. Ask me what the secret. Ask me what is the secret of comedy?
What is
Timing.
Shit. You're gonna do it to me on every show.
Oh, it's gonna be great. Alright, yeah, we have a segment on our show called Growing Up Geeky. So, what is something you geeked out on as a kid?
As a kid.
As a kid.
kid.
as a
child.
As a child.
As a wee
When
baby.
I was a
A
child,
baby clown.
there wasn't that much movies. It was mostly a lot of cowboy shows.
You can eat
You
your
can
own
eat
child.
out of covers.
Yeah, you know, there was a show called Wild Bill Hickok with Andy Devine as his sidekick Jingles. There was Wyatt Earp with Hugh O'Brien. You know, a lot of old westerns like that. But as I got older, I got into a lot of the old black and white sci-fi films that were made in the 50s and 60s. And so but
I mean, that's what you had to geek out on back then.
yeah, that was it. You geeked out with what you had.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you think about it, all that stuff is the precursor to saying George Lucas creating Star Wars, basing his mythology on westerns, on Japanese shoguns and samurais and things like that.
Well, it's interesting, yeah, because the back then when I was living in California, Star Wars had just come out. It was playing at the Grauman's Chinese Theater.
Oh, that's
So if you've ever seen any of those photos, the huge crowd, literally, my wife and I stood in line for 2 shows before we were able to get in to see the movie. So I mean, that was pretty wild.
I didn't know you didn't share with us before.
I
Can you?
gotta come up with something new.
We always learn new things when we talk to people. There's always good stories. So.
I'm old. I have a lot of stories.
We haven't even got to Adam West yet. Okay, let's side quest. Let's side quest into Star Wars real quick. So you were there
Yeah.
for like the initial push of Star Wars.
Oh,
What was the buzz like going
Oh, it was
into?
incredible. People could not the word of mouth, hit. And the lines in front of the big movie theaters like Romans were around the block. And the next 2, The Empire Strikes Back and The Return of the Jedi, those 3. Back in the late 70s to early 80s, those were movie events, and people were in line for those. And I mean, especially in a movie town like LA.
Yeah.
So that was wild. I was working at Universal Studios at the time.
You were at Universal Studios too?
Yes, I went to Universal Studios. It was they had a tourist attraction called Castle Dracula, and that was because the Frank Langella Dracula movie had just come out. Yeah, you're nothing like I don't remember that. But yeah, that was a big film. Langella had played Dracula on Broadway, and they basically redid Dracula and did it again. It was a reboot of Dracula.
For the film. For
For
film.
film.
Alright,
And so
for
they
70th
built
time in
this
the 70s.
enormous set that looked like Dracula's castle. And I played Renfield, and there's a voiceover actor, Richard Epcar. I don't know if you know his name.
I figured.
But, of course you know Richard Epcar. Yes, Richard Epcar is an incredible guy. Richard got me started in looping. Yeah, Richard was working in a lot of Japanese animation
Oh.
where we had to loop foreign films to make sure the words fit the lip flaps.
I love lip flaps.
Yeah.
I love when you say lip flaps.
It's James's favorite term.
My
That's
favorite voiceover.
Wow, well, that's not creepy.
He's a creepy guy.
I'm creeping the comment. Made my point.
But yeah, so I mean, Richard and I and a whole bunch of people would work at a studio called Intersound on Sunset Boulevard, and we would get there at 10 o'clock at night, and we would be looping foreign films until 6 in the morning.
That sounds awesome.
Well, because during the day they had Spanish-speaking actors in. And they would bring in the Spanish-speaking actors who would be looping Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, all of those shows into Spanish. So that was where their real bread and butter was, because Paramount was paying that bill, and so they would dub all those films in Spanish and then send them down to Mexico and South America. So that was it was a busy place. That studio never closed its doors. It was going 24 hours a day.
That is awesome. So how did how do you know what the characters were saying? Since
We would be given scripts.
oh,
We didn't make it up.
We just make up a story based on what I think that Whisper's going to say.
Well, now, guys like Richard Epcar and another friend of mine, Michael Sorge, basically, they would get the script from Japan. This is the story. There would be the timelines for each character. So they would be able, there would be like numbers running along at the bottom of the screen so that you could count and see, okay, this is where he's saying this. And sometimes the character would say, hello! But the lip flaps would go on for 5 minutes because apparently it takes a long time to say hello to Japan. So they'd have to go, okay, it's like, hello, how are you doing today? Just, you know, I'm fine, but they would be adding more lines because sometimes the lip flaps were more numerous than the lines. And in Japan, they don't worry about the lip flaps.
Right.
They just do it. And you know, I watched a number of Japanese anime videos where it's like your character's still talking and he just stopped, you know, stop moving. But in the States, it bothers people, so they really have to work to get it really tight.
Right.
And so we had a good time doing that. We did a Spanish film. It was a series called The Three Musketeers. It was a story of the Three Musketeers. And it was dogs and cats and pigs and chickens and ducks. And I was doing Cowboy. And it's the same voice as I used to whistle. And Richard said, well, you know, you can't just bring it in for one character, because Rishi's only in a few scenes. Oh, there's a pig in this scene who has a run-in with the Three Musketeers. Do a few lines for the pig, so they can do the dialogue and do the pig. There's a duck who's going to be in this next scene, you know, with the queen. You know, be the duck's assistant. And I would just come up with characters. Well, one day I got a panic phone call at 1 a.m, and Richard said, get down here right away. I said, I thought you said you didn't need it. I thought so too. But it turns out, you know, all those little characters you play, like the duck, the pig, the monkey, the chicken, and the cow, yeah, they're all petitioning the king.
I need you to do all of these characters.
Do you remember all of the voices? I said, no. And he said, okay, I'm going to be pulling some of the scenes, and so, you know, you can hear the voices to refresh your memory. But that was it. I ended up driving from Pasadena into Hollywood. I got there around 1:30, and from 1:30 to 4 in the morning, I was redoing all of those different voices.
I'm sure it was the standard voice acting practice where it's like, we don't have to pay you until your fourth character.
Yeah, well, actually, with these, if you're going to be there for like a 4-hour period, they would pay, and this was great money back then, $1,000. Right? They never paid residuals.
Right.
That was the job.
that's how they did it.
Yeah. Now, the stuff that I've done, like The Loud House and Tom and Jerry, I did Top Cat Begins, which was a movie, and I also did A Curious George. I'm still getting checks for those. I just got a big check from Curious George just last week, 47 cents.
Hey!
That, by comparison to some of the stuff I've seen, is amazing.
Yeah. And the thing is, it used to be that you would get them in the mail. And sometimes, yes, it costs more to mail a 7 or 8 cent check.
Right.
You know, but now it's all done online. So, big savings.
Right.
Keep those 47 cent checks.
Yeah,
Exactly.
47
That's
cents a pop.
definitely paying rent.
Yes.
So, okay, we jumped into you being in LA.
Right.
Where did you go to school?
I
Where
went
are
to
you from?
school in New England. I grew up in New York, and I went to school in Connecticut. And you're going to make poor You're gonna make Lizzo airsick and keep swinging or whatever.
Sorry.
But I did a lot of acting in school in high school, and then I went to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York, and then I did dinner theater. I don't know if they still have it, but I did dinner theater in Ohio, a little town called Miamisburg, Ohio, and the theater went bankrupt. Well, fast forward 35 years later, I'm doing an evening of old-time radio, and we had Betty White on the bill, Jonathan Winters, Gary Owens, a lot of wonderful people.
That's awesome.
And I'm sitting there in the green room, and there's a number of young people that were working, and he looks around and he goes, "So, how'd some of you people get to show business?" And I have a big story. I said, "Well, my big start was doing dinner theater in Ohio." And he went, "Well, I'm a Dayton boy." I said, "Really?" I said, "Well, that's interesting because the theater was foreclosed on by the Winters Bank." And he went, "Foreclosed on? That was my granddad's bank." And he said, "Foreclosed on your theater, huh?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "My mother would have loved that. That old broad hated the theater." Jonathan Winters.
Jonathan Winters.
If you go back and watch that, like Morgan Mindy, he was in Morgan Mindy. Great actor,
Incredible improvisation.
Yes.
You're just going over everyone's head.
Most of the people who I've had run-ins, no one would remember. Alright? Show of hands. Billy Barty. Wow! Interesting. Okay. Cary Grant. Okay.
Cary Grant.
Yeah. Thank you. But but people like that, it was very interesting. I'll tell the Cary Grant story because enough of them remember Cary Grant.
And I just teaches you to tell that before or after he was the president of the Screen Actors Guild.
Much after.
Okay.
But this was when I was working for Milt Larson at the Variety Arts Center. We did a show about the Ziegfeld Follies, and we did a recreation of some of the performers of the 1914 Ziegfeld Follies. Will Rogers, Fanny Bryce, W.C. Fields, and Eddie Cantor. And I was doing W.C. Fields. I was in full makeup. I got a costume, a Western costume. When I was looking at the jacket, it was from Paramount Studios. It was a jacket that we built.
Oh wow.
Which was pretty cool. So anyway, I'm there, and I'm about to get out of
And
here
even
when Milt Larson runs backstage and goes, "Cary Grant is in the alleyway. I don't want to bring him up the main elevator because he'll get mobbed. Take the freight elevator and bring him up through the kitchen." I said, "But I'm in." He says, "Don't worry about it. Go." So I'm dressed as W.C. Fields. I ride down in the freight elevator. As I open the door, Cary Grant is smoking a cigarette, and he looks up and he sees me and he goes, "My God! Bill Fields is all I live and breathe." And he got into the elevator with me and he told me stories all the way up. He mentioned one where he belonged to a group called the High Hatters Club. And a lot of big Hollywood stars would meet at Chasen's restaurant in Beverly Hills. And they'd get there at midnight when the restaurant was closed, and they would drink and tell stories. Edgar Bergen, the ventriloquist with Charlie McCarthy, just so many different people. Gene Fowler, John Barrymore.
Okay.
They would all be there, and they would just have a great time. Anyway, so Cary Grant said, after 2 months of this, he says, we would get there at midnight, and we wouldn't leave until 6 in the morning. He says, when we had to get in our limos and get to our various studios. And I turned to Bill Fields, and I said, "Bill, this is too much, I have to quit." And Bill Fields called me a sissy.
Bullish.
That just sounds like a fun conversation with Cary Grant.
Bullish.
There was a lot of weird stuff. And I would be working nights sometimes as a waiter. It was like 1 in the morning. I stopped off at a supermarket to get some milk for my cereal. And I'm standing in line behind John Travolta. Yeah,
stories.
so many things, that, there's so many people you run into. It was wild.
When were you behind John Travolta?
Oh,
This was like after
oh no,
Saturday Night?
no, this was during Welcome Back.
Oh, Welcome Back Carter.
Yeah, this is during the Welcome Back Cotter years. That's
Oh,
how
wow.
far back that is. And I just saw your eyes just rolled up. Huh? Yes, there was an old thing we used to call television. People used to watch it instead of their phones.
Now television is on the internet.
We haven't got to Bozo and Flamo.
I was taking an improv comedy class, and as we were all getting together, one of the kids in the class comes running in. He was a little late, and he said, "I just got word Chuck Barris is so desperate for acts for the Gong Show that he's taking after minimum. After minimum back then was $150. That was my rent.
Right.
That's how far back that goes. I lived in Beverly Hills in an apartment about the size of this stage. It had a little Murphy bed and a hot plate. That was it.
You got $150 in Beverly Hills.
$150 in Beverly Hills. So I figured if I could come up with one stupid act of money, I got my rent covered. And so I did. I came up with several different acts. And eventually I came up with this one act called Dr. Flamo. I had a table with 7 candles, little tiny ones, great big thick ones, and I would hold my hand over each flame and scream in a different key depending on the size candle. And I did the song Smoke Gets in Your Eyes. And I figured I was going to lose.
My
And I did again. I'll do the bit, they'll boo me on the stage. I go home, I get $150. So I'm waiting to go on, and there was a very, I would have to describe her as a very unfortunate looking girl. She was, to be kind, homely. To be cruel. She was not an attractive, but she was.
It's me.
Yeah,
I
okay.
went back
Ah,
to
there
it was me.
But she was dressed up in a pretty dress. She was getting ready to go on, and she turns to me because she was ahead of me, and she turned and she said, "I know I'm not very attractive." And, no, please. I know I'm not attractive. She said, but Barbara Streisand is not attractive, and she is a great singer. I said, well, yes, that's true. She's a great singer. And she said, and I am a great singer.
gotta go.
Good for you.
Confidence.
Yeah, that was good. So she got, now the big song back then was a song called You Light Up My Life. That was a big song. Debbie Boone, daughter of Pat Boone, she did that song. It was a big hit. And she gets on stage, and they start the music, and she starts to sing. And she managed to not hit a single note that was in that song. I couldn't believe that someone could be both flat and sharp at the same time. And it was like, oh, dear mother of mercy. And the audience, I mean, they were like the crowds in ancient Rome. They were horrible. And I just watched this girl leave in tears. It's like, oh, they're gonna love me. But I didn't care because I knew the act was stupid. So I get up there and I said, I just need a moment to make sure the candles are in tune. And I went, close enough. And I heard someone in the audience yell, he's hurting himself. And I did the act and they cheered. And I ended up winning. And, I'm sitting there and Chuck Barris is next to me and I went, you like that? Elbows me in the ribs and goes, shut up, kid, you're a hit. Anyway, so I'm going backstage and I'm going, what did I win? I said, well, first prize is $1,000. And I went, wow. Unless you want the trophy. I went, huh? If you want the trophy, then you only get $850. So you charge $150 for the trophy. Well, at first I was going to say no, but then I thought, I'm getting $150 anyway, because I'm going to get my afterpay. So I have a honest to goodness gong show trophy in my office at home.
That's like 6 months worth of rent right there.
Yes, exactly.
The other thing is, and this has been my head the entire time. What was the length of time that you had to go through to get a medical license and burn your hand?
Don't give away your secrets.
In spite of that, I'm not stupid.
Well, I was trying to find out
Seven.
license.
Actually, I found out that there was a guy in Las Vegas who stole my act. Yeah, and he was doing that act in Vegas.
More recent or back
About 20 years ago, I found this out.
then? I mean, it's still pretty recent in
Yeah,
comparison
still
to
pretty
the
recent.
character.
A friend of mine, Marshall Rodin, went down to Las Vegas regularly, and he went to see Dennis Burton's show and his warm-up comic, and he came and he said, you know, I know the guy who originated that act.
Oh, is it oops?
Yeah. A few years later, I was in Las Vegas, and I went and I got tickets to Dennis Burton's show. He found out I was in the audience and completely changed his warm-up.
No way.
So that was it.
You're like, I kind of want to see it.
He's like, no, Dr. Flamo's in the audience. Do not do that act.
Yeah, I guess if I had pushed it, I probably could have sued him, but I did not want to go through all of that.
Right.
But Flamo got you to.
Flamo got me on the Tonight Show. This goes back to Milt Larson and the Variety Arts Center. Johnny Carson's casting director was a man called Jim McCulley. And Jim McCulley would go to all the comedy clubs to see all the latest comics, and he would book them on the Tonight Show. But McCulley had a reputation of he never laughed. He would sit in an audience, stone-faced, analyzing what made your act funny. Comedians loved to see him in the audience because they knew he was looking for talent for the Tonight Show. They hated seeing him in the audience because they couldn't tell if he was enjoying this actor. So I'm doing that, but I was lucky because he had 2 guests with him that night. Tim Conway and Harvey Korman.
Oh.
And Milt said, Jim McCulley is here to see a couple of magicians. One of them does a very messy act. We're going to close the curtain, clean the stage, and get ready for the second magician. Would you go in front of the curtain and do Dr. Flamo? So I said, sure. Do you know who I had play the piano for me that night? Dick Sherman of the Sherman Brothers. The man who wrote the music for Mary Poppins.
Right.
Dick was a friend of Bill's, so he was there and played Smoke Gets in Your Eyes. Anyway, so I did the act, and Tim Conway and Harvey Korman broke. Tim Conway literally slid off his chair and looked out under the table. And as I'm putting my props away, Bill comes backstage and he says to me, Jim McCulley wants to talk to you in the bar. And that's how I got booked on the Tonight Show. And the Tonight Show got me a personal manager. And the personal manager pretty much poisoned my name in Hollywood by saying, oh, he doesn't do under 5-line parts.
Oh no.
Yeah. So after pretty much poisoning my name with every casting director, I was in trouble. And I was lucky because Lozo the Clown came along. And I sent the Tonight Show tape to Chicago. And that's what got me the job. They watched me burning my hands to music and said, that's the kind of man we want in the show.
The sacrifice.
Look at this clown. He'll make a good clown.
Yes. Anyway, have I talked too much or
No, this is good. By the way, if you have questions, we have a mic set up. Just raise your hand. We'll get to it in a bit. We haven't even talked about yokai lodge.
That's
like that. I guess we can transition.
Any questions?